All right, so I don't see any questions in the questions area yet, so I think I'm just going to cover some basics on a purchase strategy for you. We'll run through a couple of things and see if that helps to jog some questions, and then we'll address those from there. So anytime you want to do a purchase, there's two ways to do it. It depends on whether you want to focus this on a brand new client or whether you want it co-branded for a partner. Now, if you want it co-branded for a partner, there's only two potential presentations available. Those are the open house flyer and the seller buy-down strategy. Now, with a client, you have the total cost analysis or the rent versus own. Now, the total cost analysis is going to be your bread and butter report. That's the one you're going to use for most of your transactions. You can use it for purchases. You can use it for refis. You can use it for just about anything. A lot of the fields in Edge can be used for something other than what they were really intended. So you can do things like debt consolidations if you'd like, by just earmarking certain costs and then using the fees to absorb them. You can do lots of different types of strategies, marketing presentations where you can show the cost of waiting. And hopefully you guys have seen some of these strategies in our support area. So I guess first, before we even get into that, I want to show you guys how to access our support, how to use it, and I'd like you all to actually log into it if you get a chance, because once you log in, you can actually track your existing requests, and you can request new features. You can get notified anytime there's a new feature released like there was the other day. So let me show you that real quick. So anytime you want to get help, just hit help up here in Edge. Now when you do that, it's going to take you to our knowledge base, and this is what it looks like. So you'll see at the top it says Welcome to Mortgage Coach Support. Now you'll notice that by default when you come in, you're not logged in. So you can access all this material without logging in if you want to. However, I would urge you to log in, and I'll show you why. Now in order to get your password, it's not the same as the one you use for Edge and RateWatch. So this is actually a separate system. You'll want to click the link up here to get your support password. Now once you do that, it's just going to ask you for your email address. If you've ever submitted a ticket with us before, you've already got a login in our system. So it's just a matter of popping your email address in here and hitting submit. Now when you do that, you're going to get emailed a link to reset your password. Now you can then set a password that you can use for your support center. And I will tell you, it's okay to use the same password as you use for Edge and RateWatch. It'll probably make it a little bit easier for you. But once you log in, you're actually able to do things like check your existing requests. You can submit new requests just like you can when you're not logged in. But back in the knowledge base, you can not only see all the topics here, but you can comment on them, you can like them, you can make new suggestions. So you'll see that when we go through these, this, for instance, is just how to create a borrower-paid MI versus lender-paid MI strategy. And you can see that we iframe in a YouTube video here. But if for some reason you don't see this iframe, which is pretty common in some browsers because it looks like restricted content, we also put the link up here for you, so you can click on it and it'll directly take you over to that YouTube page so you can view the content. Now, once you're logged in, you can see that it says 0 people found this useful. Be the first. Now when you click be the first, it's going to ask you to log in if you haven't already. You can log in with your Twitter, Facebook, or Google Plus account. So that's actually a pretty easy way to do it if you'd like to. Again, you don't have to. You can always just get your password and you'll log in with your email address and a password that you've set up. Chuck's question, did you say you need a different password for support? Actually, you can use the same password if you like, but you do have to set it up one time. So in order to do that, when you get to this knowledge base, just click on this link here that's, and I'm sorry, let me get back home. Click on the link here that says click here to get your support password, and then it'll send you a link so that you can set a password that you specifically use for support. Again, you don't have to, but it's going to actually give you a little bit more feedback. You can do things like you can subscribe to certain forums. For instance, the new feature walkthrough videos. This would be one I would definitely subscribe to because every time we push out a new feature, I'm going to put a video and an explanation in here so that you know. So you can see that this new release 11/5/2013, that was the one that happened a couple of days ago. If you were subscribed to this particular channel, you'd get a notification via email to let you know that, hey, there was a new release, here's some videos. Now, you can also check your existing requests once you're logged in. So if you've got pending tickets in our system, you can see what we're doing on them. If, for instance, it's been a couple of days, we're still working on it. We might have internal comments that are on there because our engineers or developers are working on a specific ticket for you. You can always check the progress of those by going to check your existing requests. But I would encourage you to subscribe to the individual forums that you'd like to be notified on. Frequently asked questions, that one I wouldn't wouldn't really go to that one. I wouldn't subscribe to it because you'll get notifications pretty constantly. We add frequently asked questions all the time. But things like new feature walkthroughs, or if you want to suggest new features, you can actually suggest them yourself. And you can see there's a few in here. So for instance, we had a suggestion for somebody that wants to create open house flyers for multiple realtors but using the same property. Now you guys know that you can use the copy function to do that. However, what about copying it to the same realtor? So that's what this guy was asking. And you can read what other people's ideas are here. You can submit your own. And then you can see that we'll actually go in and look at it. We'll take a look and see if it's something that we might be able to do. And if it is, we'll mark it as planned. If it's done, we'll mark it as done. Or if it's just not feasible, we'll mark it as not planned. So again, in order to get here, Jim asked the question, how do I get to that again? All you do is click on Help from within Edge, and that's going to take you to the knowledge base. So that'll take you to this page right here. You can then click here to get your support password. It'll email you a link, then you can reset it. And then you can subscribe to the individual channels that you'd like to be updated on. Now I am going to be adding a new feature fairly soon here that's going to be just kind of a status alert kind of place where you can subscribe to it and it'll give you immediate status. So for instance, if we've got a maintenance that's planned or something like that, or if, God forbid, like the other day we had a little bit of a bug in Edge in the morning that causes it to slow down, we'll post notifications up there for you to let you know that there's something going on and we're working on it so that you can be notified ahead of time. Now you'll notice that there's also a couple of new forums down at the bottom here. There's compliance and mortgage news, which there's nothing in yet, but we're going to be posting that. We've got our Ken Perry videos that come out every once in a while. He puts one out. He actually put one out this morning, and it's called Compliance Matters. So we'll also be posting that same content in here in the compliance and mortgage news. So as we get new things, we're going to make sure and let you know about them. We attend webinars constantly on compliance, so as we get more information, we'll make sure you're always in the know. Jim's question, he says, I have MPC CRM and an MPC I uploaded a file, but it's not showing in Mortgage Coach. How come? Jim, I'd have to see that individual to know, but generally when you're in MPC and you want to generate a TCA, when you get to your, and actually I want to say it's the transaction area in MPC, there's a button there that says generate a TCA. When you do that, you click on the button, it's going to send you over to the Edge login screen. And then once you log in, you should see that particular contact, that particular loan scenario as the first client in the list on your home screen. If you're not seeing that, you might want to try doing it again. Also check inside MPC after you've done that to make sure that when you scroll down towards the bottom in the Edge area, you see an Edge link in there. That means that it has indeed been passed over. There might be something else going on, Jim, but that one's probably, I'd like you to test it out one more time, and then if it still doesn't work, send us a note over at support@mortgagecoach.com, and we'll see what we can do to help there. All right, and I'm probably going to butcher your name. I'm terribly sorry, but Neldine, she says, when I enter info in the partner in the open house flyer is showing the loan amount higher on the example than what is true. The down payment shows as negative. That one is going to be a very specific one, Neldine. If you would, send us the link to your report over at support@mortgagecoach.com. We'll take a look at it and we'll see what's going on, but it sounds like you might have a property value that is lower than your loan amount. That would cause a negative equity kind of situation. But normally it shouldn't do that. The down payment should always be a positive figure on those flyers. All right, so let's get back over into Edge. And we'll get into actually let's do a seller buy down strategy. This is actually starting to become more popular now since we're in such a huge purchase market still. And with rates kind of going up as they have been over the last couple of months, there's been a need to credit against the rate. So I'm going to show you how to do a permanent buy down flyer inside Edge. So we'll start with a brand new partner. And I'm just going to call him John Realtor. Now you'll notice that there's certain fields in Edge that are red and certain ones that are black. The ones that are in red are required. So these fields, if you don't fill them in, you're going to find that you get exclamation points down on these bottom tabs. So if you ever see an exclamation point down here, it's probably because you missed one of the red fields. Now the one caveat to that rule is if you're doing a VA or USDA where it's got 100% financing, you're going to have a 0 in the down payment field, and the down payment field is one of those red fields. So you will see an exclamation point there, but just if you're doing 100% financing, don't worry about it. The exclamation point is not going to hurt your report. It's just letting you know that something's empty in there. All right, so friendly name, And actually, let's fill out the rest of these. This is a realtor and referred by, let's say, Chamber of Commerce. Now, friendly name, very important. This is going to differentiate what property this is for, especially on the partner side. It's critical that you enter a friendly name here. So this one's going to be for 123 Any Street. Now, the whole reason behind this is if I don't enter a friendly name, when I go to look this person up in my home screen, all I'm going to see is John Realtor, but I have no idea what property that's for. And if I have multiple presentations for this particular realtor, there's no way for me to tell which one's which unless I tag them with which property they are. So street address, pretty straightforward. And then property features. Now, some of these aren't terribly necessary if you're doing a seller buy down. These are really geared more towards the open house flyer. So you don't necessarily have to put these in, but I will put the asking price in there because I know that that does populate through when I do my products. So asking price, let's say $350. Now, images. The whole reason we give you 3 placeholders for images is we want you to be able to use a different image for the seller buy down versus the open house flyer. But also, we do intend at some point in the near future to add the ability to show multiple images, at least on the live version. Probably not on the printed version just yet because there's just no room for it at this point. But we're going to see if we can get you a cycling carousel of images on the live report. So that could be a new feature coming down the line pretty soon here, and that's one of those ones where when we do publish it, you'll see it in the new feature videos. So I'm going to go ahead and just browse for an image here, see if I've got any house images. Okay, so there we go. So I'll go ahead and browse for the image that I saved, and you can get these off the listing, you know, if you go to Realtor.com or Zillow or whichever one you're looking at, or you can get it directly from your Realtor partner. I will tell you that there's really no reason to edit the picture name or description here. These do not show up on your presentation at all. In fact, there's a different description area that you can use for your specific description for the property if you need to. But one other thing, don't delete the picture name. If you have nothing in here, it's going to look really odd when you get to the end and you're asked to select an image because it won't have a name for it and you won't know to select it. So I'm just going to leave the name that came over with the file. All right, so now let's get into the products. Now, because I'm doing a seller buy down strategy, I don't need to enter 4 products. I'm not going to be doing a comparison. I really only need to enter one product, the product that I'm going to show a seller buy down on. So we can call this whatever we'd like, say FHA. Actually, let's do a conventional. Conventional, 5% down. And this is about the limit of how long you want your product names to be. This is actually probably a little too long if I had 4 products. But for best results, if you know that this is going to be printed, you want to keep it at 12 characters or less. The seller buy down, it's not as important because you're only doing one product, but specifically on the open house flyers, it becomes very important. If your product names are a little too long, what happens is when you go to print out that flyer, some of the columns on the right side will be pushed out of the print view. So you won't be able to, they won't show up on the flyer the way they're supposed to. So if you ever find that's happening, come back in here, use some acronyms and try and shorten this a little bit, and then everything will fit in the right area. Now, since this is a conventional, I'm not going to check the FHA box. And I'm just going to put my 5% down. And let's say that I can get them an interest rate of 4.875 on a 30-year term. Now you want to enter your closing costs here because this is going to help you generate cash to close. But especially for a seller buy down, you can probably ballpark these. If you have your templates created, templates are always faster. But feel free to ballpark these if you need to. I'm going to leave these out for today. Actually, let's just pull in a template. See if I've got any in this account. Yes, I do. Good. There we go. So I pulled in a template there. I'm going to hit Apply to Loan. And then the last part, make sure and put in your hazard and taxes. And mortgage insurance if there needs to be. And in this case, since it's 5% down, it's definitely going to have it. Now for conventional loans, you don't want to check this Calc MI on balance box. This is only for government loans. The government loans actually calculate the MI based on an average of the last 12 months of balance. So it's a pretty hairy calculation, but it does not apply to conventional loans at all. So you would only check this if you're doing FHA, USDA, VA, whatever has an MI fee that needs to do that. But generally, you're only going to use this for FHA. Now I'm going to leave my 78% cutoff because that is standard for conventional. I don't need to indicate an MI cutoff month because we want Edge to just drop that MI at 78%. And then I don't need to add another product because I've already got this whole thing nailed, the products in there. Now it's time to just do the analysis for the seller buy down. So I can skip the analysis screen and go straight over to contact. So this is where it asks you for more detailed information about your partner. So, what company do they work for and so forth. And you'd want to put in their numbers here. Now their email actually becomes kind of important. When you get to the end of this presentation, you're given the option to check a box to alert you when a presentation is viewed. But if you enter a partner email in here, you'll also have an option to notify your partner when that's viewed. So I'm going to make sure and put my partner's email in here. Licensing information, this is the DRE, so if you happen to know that. If you don't, you can look it up easily on Google. Street address, not as important. Nobody really focuses on where the realtor's, office is, and they usually are going to come to the client, so we don't have to worry too much about this. But you can reuse this field. Remember I told you early in the presentation, some of these fields can be reused for other things. So for instance, the street address field, since I know that this is going to appear near the contact information on the presentation, I can use this for a motto. So, best realtor in town. And then I'm going to upload a headshot and a logo for that realtor partner. Best to get these directly from the partner, but you can always glean them from their Facebook pages, LinkedIn, Google. There's all kinds of places, and most times you will find that they have logos and photos just about everywhere. So let's put in our man face. And I've already got my greenhouse logo in there. Let's put in, I think I've got a Remax in here. There we go. All right, perfect. And actually, before we move on, Jim has a comment question. FHA stop dropping MI, do we leave that blank? So when you're doing FHA MI cutoffs, what you do is you leave the LTV cutoff blank and you complete the monthly cutoff with 360 if it's a 30-year loan. Obviously, if it's a lesser term, you're going to make it for whatever the term is. But you've got to tell Edge to carry it full term. So instead of just leaving zeros there, make sure to enter the term in the MI cutoff month. Now, one thing to consider also, Jim, there's still some FHA loans that do allow for a drop-off when it's below 90%, for instance. They only have to carry it for 132 months, and then it can drop off at 78% if it is there. So make sure to check the guidelines when you're doing those. Okay, so now we're going to check seller buy down because this is the one we want to do. Now, payment notes, remember, they're basically for compliance, but this is another one of those fields where you can add additional color if you need to. So for instance, I'm going to put payment includes hazard insurance and property tax. And actually, I would probably also say it includes MI. Oops. Now you can also use this field for additional details about the property if you need to. For instance, property is FHA eligible, something like that. Now here's where the seller buy down comes into play. Now there's a few pieces of information you're going to need to collect from your lock desk first. So you'll call your marketing department, call your lock desk, and you're going to need to find out exactly how much you can drop the rate and how much it's going to cost the seller. So let's, for instance, say that I call my lock desk and they say, you know what, you can drop the rate by 0.25% and it's going to cost the seller 1 point to do. So if I know I can drop the rate 0.25%, I'm going to put my 0.25% right here. Now in terms of what it's going to cost the seller, I want to make sure that my price credit equals that cost to the seller, because in the end I'm going to show the seller the same cost to either reduce the price or buy down the rate. So I need to find out what 1 point is equal to. The quickest way to do it is go back to my product, and I'm going to go to that closing cost screen. I'm going to put 1 point right here. Now I'm not going to keep this point, but the reason I'm doing it here is now I can hover over it and find out exactly what that equates to. That is now 33.25. So now I can get rid of this. And now I'm going to go back to my buy down screens. I'm going to put 33.25 in this price credit field. Joan's question real quick. She says, how did I get to that closing cost screen? What I did is I hovered over products. If you have more than one product, it would show all of them, and then you could click on the one you want to go to. But I just clicked on products, and it took me to the last screen of the product here. And all I did was hit the left arrow, and that took me immediately to my closing cost screen. Okay, so back to our details here. So the last piece of information you'll need to see is you need to check your guidelines and find out what the percent of income to qualify is for this program. Say it's about 42. Now you have an area here that gives you a little bit more color. You can rename this title. It doesn't have to be called Seller Buydown. You can even call it something like Permanent Buydown, or even Seller Finance Buydown is fine, but I'm just going to put it as a title right now so you guys can see what it looks like. And you can change the description too. I mean, this is kind of an innocuous description. You might want to put a little bit more color into this and let them know a bit more about it. Now, the long description is pretty important because, one, we've got deductible spelled wrong. The long description is kind of important because you can put a lot more color around what this is. And you can see that, you know, there's some default text here that's pretty good. You definitely want to keep this part here that says, please consult your CPA for specific tax information. Unless you guys are tax attorneys, you really need to disclaim yourself against any kind of tax benefit equation. Just primarily saying, look, this is for educational purposes, but I'm not a CPA. So if you want hard numbers on exactly what your benefit is, you really should contact your CPA. So the last part is we need to select the image we want. So remember, there was 3 possibilities for uploading images. Had I uploaded more than one image, I'd see them in a list here. Now remember, I told you that it's very important that you don't erase the name of that image. The reason is, if I erase the name, this would be a blank line, and I wouldn't know that I need to select it. So it might get a little confusing. So I've got to left click on it to make it populate here. And then I can hit my right arrow. And now it's time to prepare the presentation. So since this is a seller buy-down strategy, I definitely want to be notified when it's viewed. I want a notification sent to my partner. And if I have call credits, I'm going to use the enable call button because this may be passed around, and I want to make sure I can capture the lead. Last part, make sure you give it a quote date. Okay, now we're going to generate the link. Now this link, once it comes up, is ready to go as is. We can literally copy and paste this into an email to our client and send it out right now. However, what I'll tell you is that anytime you're doing a partner-facing presentation, you want to add a video to it. It's very, very important that you get that contact with them, especially if you're using this for prospecting. You know, sending somebody a presentation that really doesn't have any personalization on it is going to, I mean, they may or may not even look at it. However, you send them a presentation that has a personalized video directed to this partner, they're definitely going to look at it. And it's going to mean a little bit more. They're going to get a connection with you, even if you've never met at that point. So instead of doing a video for today, I'm actually just going to preview this report. I'm going to show you how you can explain this to your realtor partner. And this is actually some of the stuff that you're going to want to put in your, oops, let's copy that link. I didn't copy it. This is actually some of the stuff that you want to put in your video as well. All right, so you guys should be seeing my presentation come up here. All right, so pretty straightforward in terms of where the images and the titles go. Remember I told you that that street address field could be reused. That shows up right here. So this best realtor in town motto that I use, that's actually the street address field. So you can see that it does populate all the information there. Naturally on my side, I've got multiple licenses here that I need to put in. I've got my company name, I've got my addresses, and all the stuff that comes out of my settings is right here. But you'll notice that the email address and the website are both clickable. Same thing on the partner side, so make sure that you've got at least those on there, because if a client is viewing this, you want them to be able to get in touch with both of you. And before we get into the explanation of this, Keith has a question real quick. If I change information in the report, do I need to create a new link, or does it change based on the current link? So great question, Keith. For all presentations in Edge, once you generate a link to that presentation, it's there. You don't have to regenerate it at any time. In fact, if you go in and you were to change rates or terms or closing costs, whatever you want to change about that presentation, it's automatically going to update on the live link within about 5 seconds. So for instance, if you're having a conversation with your borrower on the phone, you've sent them a total cost analysis, and you've got 4 products on there, and let's say maybe one of them's a 15-year note, and they just tell you, you know what, the 15-year doesn't make any sense to me. It's a little too costly, so if you could remove that from the report, it would make more sense for me. Great. You just go to your presentation window, uncheck the box to remove that 15-year note, and then hit one of the arrows, either right or left, and that triggers a save. What that means is as soon as it's saved, it takes only a few seconds for it to update the live report, because these refresh every 5 seconds. So it's always going to call our database and find out what's the most current information relative to this presentation. So you don't need to regenerate the report, Keith. You can just make your changes, and then as soon as you hit one of those save triggers, the right or left arrows, you know within 5 seconds it's going to update that link, so you don't have to do anything about it. All right, so let's get into explaining the seller buydown. So just to give you an idea of where things show up, the quote date shows up on the top right here. We've got examples of financing at the top. This is kind of more of a compliance deal here. We don't really want to earmark these as any type of definite strategy. We're just showing examples of financing. Now we can name them appropriately, so feel free to change names as you need to. But this left column here is just traditional financing. This is my 5% down that I can get without any kind of buy down. You can see what my approximate cash to close is and my total monthly payment. And you can see that it's got those double asterisks there. Now the double asterisks are tied to this right here. So you can see that's where my payment includes hazard insurance, property tax, and MI. So those are tied together. That's another compliance note for you if anybody ever asks you about that. Now you'll notice that the APR has a single asterisk next to it. There's also a single asterisk down here next to your disclaimer. So usually your disclaimer, you should have some language about what the APR is. If you're working with an organization that has a site license, you've probably already got all this information in there, and you don't have to mess with it. But if you're a single user, you might want to go revisit your disclaimers and just make sure that they reflect what you expect them to reflect. You need some APR language in there. You need the, not a commitment to lend. You might want to say something about educational purposes, free GFE. There's a lot of buzzwords that you can use that are definitely going to protect you. Okay, so price reduction. Now the price reduction column, what this is remember, we're going to show the same cost to the seller to either reduce the price or reduce the rate. The price reduction is we took the value of that 1 point and said, okay, it's going to cost you a point either way. So let's reduce our purchase price by the amount of that point. So you can see our purchase price is at $346,675. Now that's reduced our loan amount just a tad. Our rate is still the same because we didn't do anything about buying that down on this scenario. And you can see our cash to close is just slightly less, about $100, and our monthly payment is $24 less than what it would be with just our traditional financing without the price drop. So $24 savings to the borrower. The income to qualify is roughly the same, so not a huge difference here. Now the price reduction, it costs the same to the seller. So it costs a point whether he's going to drop the price or whether he's going to apply it to a rate buy down. Now in this case, he's applying it to a rate buy down. So our sales price stays the same. It's $350, just like it was in the traditional financing. Our loan amount is the same, but we got a lower interest rate as a result of this. We were able to lower it by 1/4%. Our term's the same. Our cash to close is exactly the same as traditional financing, but look at our monthly payment. We've got now a $25.09 payment. This is a 2-to-1 ratio on value. They can get twice the value by reducing the rate as they can by dropping their sales price by the same amount. So same cost to the seller, twice the value. Now check out what we have for income to qualify. Now in this case, it doesn't make a huge difference. It's only $2,000 difference, but that opens up more borrowers for you. Now price versus rate. This one is, it's critical that you know how to explain this one because it's very powerful. Price versus rate what this is showing is how much would the seller need to reduce his price to get that same monthly payment savings as you're showing with the rate reduction. And the answer in this case is it would cost him almost $10,000 in price reduction versus that $3,000 price reduction that he's using for the rate buy down. So it's costing him 3 times as much to match that same cost savings by doing a price reduction. So there's another ratio for you, 3 to 1 there. You can either drop your price and get a small savings. You can use that same amount of money and drop the rate and get a significant savings. Or if you want that significant savings with a price drop, it's going to cost you 3 times as much as it would the rate drop. So Joan's question, I'm trying to do a sample presentation along with you, but all 4 of my options are the same. You have probably missed a critical step back in here, Joan. This part right here, you've got to make sure that you've got these figures filled out, especially the change in rate. If you don't have the change in rate, there's going to be no difference between those loans. So probably want to go back and check those and just make sure you've got them filled out. All right. So Jim's question, can you explain that 2 to 1 benefit again? I didn't understand. All right, so the rate reduction, the reason I'm calling this a 2 to 1 benefit for the rate reduction is this is going to cost the same for the seller to do. Whether he decides to reduce his price by $3,300 or whether he spends that $3,300 on a point to buy down the rate. So same price to the seller, but the monthly savings for the borrower, he's saving $50 by doing the rate buy down. He's only saving $24 by doing the price drop. So there's your 2 to 1 ratio of the savings here. It literally, for the same amount of money, you get twice as much value for that rate reduction. And then going even further, if they're just bent on doing a price reduction versus, instead of doing a rate buy down, it would actually cost them a price reduction of almost $10,000 to get the same thing they can get with a rate reduction that only costs them $3,000. All right. So there's your seller buy down strategy. I should show you what it looks like in print so you guys can see this. Now this is a great tool for courting new realtor partners. An easy way to really get in the door is to find some expired listings, some older properties that have been on the market for a while, especially some that have already undergone a price reduction. In those cases, you'd probably want to use a more catchy title like never reduce your price again or something like that. The agents are looking at this property and it's been sitting on the market for 6 months. They've had to do 3 price reductions just to try and get some interest in it, and the agent's watching his commission slip away. Now, with this strategy, they no longer have to reduce the price. All they have to do is buy down the rate. And remember, that's a back-end point, so it's not coming out of the seller's pocket. It's coming out of the sales proceeds. So also critical to understand, the buyer can even write that point off. So that's a pretty cool feature there. But when it comes to talking about this with the agent, you're going to emphasize how this is just a win-win all around. I mean, if they continue on the progress that they're going right now with this property, it's going to undergo a couple more price drops, and they're going to end up selling it lower than they expected, which means lower commissions for the realtor. The seller's not that happy. He's not getting the value out of his property. The neighbors are not that happy because now they've got this low-priced comp to compare if they want to sell or refi their house, so their appraisal is going to be a little bit lower. And then, of course, you as the originator, you're originating a lesser-priced loan, so you're not making as much on it either. So when we're looking at how this affects everybody in the equation, one, you're happy. You're developing a partnership with a realtor that has probably a bunch of these properties that are sitting on the market and can't quite move. So you're showing him a strategic financing strategy that you can apply to lots of different properties that he may be having trouble moving. So that's one killer point for you. Now, 2, obviously, with this partnership, it opens the door for you closing more loans that are referred through that partner. So the partner also wins because they're going to sell this place at a higher price, which means they're going to get a better commission on it. Even the selling agent is going to, or both the selling and listing agents are going to get a better commission on this because it's going to sell at a higher price. Now, the borrower wins, obviously, because he's getting a lower rate that's going to affect his monthly payment. He's getting a lower monthly payment. He can qualify with a little bit less income, so you're attracting new batches of borrowers that may not have otherwise been able to do this. And then, of course, the seller wins because he doesn't have to reduce that price again. You know, he can sell it at asking price. He can pull the point out of the back to reduce the rate, and he gets the cash in hand that he was looking for initially without having to do a price drop that was 3 times as much to attract the same borrower. All right, so there's seller buy down. Lisa's question, I came in late to the webinar. Will this be posted on the site for review later? If so, where can I get it? Absolutely. I am recording this, and I do record it every week for those of you that are first-time attendees here. You can find this, actually, if you go to the Mortgage Coach site, that's just mortgagecoach.com, and then hover over the Community tab and choose Coaching Call Archive. Now, I always post the most recent Thursday training call right here, so it's the same link every week. You can always click on it. Usually by Thursday night, I'll have it done. Don't hold me to it. Sometimes it takes a little while to convert and post these up to the website, but definitely by Friday morning, you will have the most recent Thursday training call here. But I've also started splitting them off next to the coaching calls. So you can see, for instance, on 10/24, Thursday training call covering purchase data entry and template creation. Annual mortgage reviews were on 10/17. Tony Blodgett came in on 10/10. I would actually urge you all to watch this if you didn't get a chance to watch it. This was a full discussion on the RateWatch MBS monitoring tool and how you would use it, how it sets you apart, and basically how it allows you to keep your hand on the trigger and really guarantee that your clients are getting the best possible rate at any time. So definitely I would urge you to check this out. All of these videos are located on our YouTube channel, so when you click on one of these, it's actually going to open up the YouTube for this. Now, today's discussion will be in the November area, so you'll see a new entry later tonight that says 2013 11/7 Thursday training call, and I'll probably label it something like seller buy down discussion and whatever else questions we get that come into play here. All right, so Jim's question real quick. Would the same idea come into play by offering, would advising the seller to not drop the price and apply the potential cost of paying closing costs? That'd be an effective strategy as well. Absolutely, Jim. In fact, what you might want to do for one of those is you can do that on an open house flyer, or you can do that on a total cost. Now, a total cost is probably going to be better because it's going to show all the details. You know, you can break out all the closing cost details, where the open house flyer is really just a flat flyer. There's not a whole lot of dig deep in there. There's really not a lot of analysis going on. It's just monthly payment. But absolutely, you could show a couple of different ones. So for instance, like Jim was talking about, you could show traditional financing for your first product in a total cost. For your second product, you could show a price drop. For your third product, you can show selling at full price, but the seller paying a bunch of the closing costs that would equate to that price drop. And then maybe for the fourth product, you do show a rate buy down. So you can show them all 4 angles of it. There's a couple of different creative ways that your seller can help out to attract more buyers. Now, it's not going to show the income to qualify on the total cost. So you're going to have to probably incorporate that into your video when you talk about it. You know, this is going to attract more borrowers because they don't have to qualify based on all this extra stuff that they have to pay. Their DTI doesn't have to be quite as low. But it's a great idea, Jim. You won't be able to do it on the seller buy down flyer itself, but you could definitely do it on the total cost or even on an open house flyer. Marcelo's question, I'm sorry, where did you go to look up the archives? The archives are at mortgagecoach.com, and then what you do is you hover your mouse over Community and choose Coaching Call Archive. And that takes you here to all of our archives. So you can see that for the longest time we were just recording the Tuesday calls. These are the ones with Dave Savage where he brings in a guest to talk about strategy. And then our Q&A sessions on Thursdays had always just been very free form, no subject matter, so we weren't really posting them up here. It was a lot of the same material over and over again. But as I had conversations, things like purchase arsenal templates, this was a really good one back in May that you might want to check out. I started logging these when they had subject content. So you'll see that after May, you'll see a lot more of these Thursday training calls in here. Things like if you wanted to know how to create and present the rent versus own presentation, this is a particularly good webinar to watch. But all of these are great. They're all an hour long, so pick and choose, grab a glass of wine, sit at home. They're on YouTube, so you can watch them on your iPad. You can watch them on your iPhone if you need to. You know, have at it. They're all there for you. I'm not going to be moving them anytime soon. And as I said earlier, today's call will be located in this November area, probably by the end of the day. Joan's question, I brought this concept up in a new realtor partner meeting yesterday, and he was asking how they would reflect the seller finance buy down on the PA through an addendum. You know, Joan, I honestly, I don't know that. And the reason I don't know is I don't originate loans. I don't process them. If you would send that over to support@mortgagecoach.com, I will find that information for you. But as it stands right now, I don't know how that's reflected. I know that you reflect it on the GFE a little bit differently than you used to because of the new GFE, but I'll find out more detail for you if you would send that over to support. Oliver's question, I'm new to Mortgage Coach. Can I record a video on my iPhone and attach it to my email report? You cannot record on your iPhone or iPad right now. All recording has to be done through a browser. And the reason is the Edge recorder is a flash media recorder. Now, if you're familiar, you've probably run into this on a couple of occasions on your iPhones and iPads. You go to a site that requires flash and it tells you you can't view this because you don't have flash. iPads and iPhones don't support Flash at all, and they're probably never going to. There's been some bad blood between them and Adobe for years, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So the short answer is no, you can't record directly from the iPhone or iPad. It has to be done through the browser. But it can be done on any browser. So if you're on a Mac, it's not a problem. You can do it through your Safari browser. You can do it in Chrome. You can do it in Firefox, whichever browser you have. The Mac will support Flash. It's just the iOS devices like iPad and iPhone that will not support Flash. David's question, I did an open house sheet and none of the photos show. What you may have done, Dave, is you might have forgotten to select them in this screen here. So after you select open house, when you start drilling through, and you're only going to get one photo, by the way, Dave. It's not going to show all three photos. I do have a ticket open to see if we can get you a photo carousel for the live version of the open house flyer in the future. But for right now, it's only a single image that you can use. But this is where I suspect got missed. When you're on this screen, you have to select the property image that you want to include. If you don't, it'll stay on none, and it won't show on your presentation. So try coming back to the second screen of the presentation area right here, and then try selecting your image, and then hit the right arrow, and it should show up on your presentation. Now, the caveat to that is if you're using a gigantic image, bigger than your computer screen, it's probably too big for Edge, and it needs to be scaled down before Edge will even save it. If you find that that's the case, shoot it over to me in support. I'll resize it for you, and I'll even upload it into your file for you. That goes for any of you. If you guys ever run into any problems with your image sizing and it's not showing up on the report, and you've gone back and you've checked to make sure that you've selected it, critical here, make sure you've selected it, because if I go into your presentation and find you haven't selected it after I've resized it, I'm going to let you know. But if you find that you're just having a problem with the sizing on those, shoot them over to support. We'll resize them for you and we'll send them back to you, or if need be, we'll upload them for you directly. And Carol's comment, thank you so much for showing this today. I will be able to show this to my realtor partner this afternoon. Excellent, Carol. I'd love to hear the feedback on that. If you would, shoot us a note tomorrow and just let me know how it went. I'd really be interested in knowing. Now, when you show this strategy, especially when you're building a first-time presentation, you've never done the seller buy-down strategy before, and you're just presenting this to a brand new realtor, I know I said it earlier, but I can't iterate this enough. It's critical that you have a video on there. If your realtor partner decides to share this with the seller or share this with the borrower, you want to make sure that your advice follows the report. And if the report doesn't have a video on it, it's open to interpretation by anybody. So make sure, at least in audio, even if you're not comfortable putting yourself on video, at least an audio presentation on there that tells them what the strategy is and how it benefits each part, any specific guidelines that need to come into play that you need to be concerned with. You got to make sure that when you send one of these out, the borrower can look at it and understand it immediately, because this is a new concept for most realtors and most borrowers. They've never heard of this. The seller might not have even been told that, hey, you don't have to drop your price by $20,000. You can spend a half a point to buy down the rate a little bit, and it's only going to cost you $5,000. They don't know that there's that option out there. So you presenting creative financing like this, it's definitely going to put you in the driver's seat, but you got to make sure that that advice follows your report. Otherwise, it just hits dead ends. Marcelo's question, where do I go to fill in the information about the home for the open house flyers? Great question. So back in our property section here, now remember, when you're doing a realtor partner inside Edge, it's going to ask you for all the details first And then when you get to the end, you're going to choose whether it's an open house or a seller buy down. So when it comes down to it and you're filling these out, you notice I skipped this area when I went through it because I'm doing a seller buy down and it's not going to have all the property features on it. But if I also wanted to do an open house flyer for this, I would need to fill out this information. So this is all under the property tab, and the first field in the property tab is just the address. But after you've entered that and you hit the right arrow, this takes you to the property features. So this is where you can put in things like the square footage and number of bedrooms and baths. And you can, I believe we changed this a while ago. Yeah, you can put in half baths here, so if you need to. I believe you can even put in a half bedroom, like an, oh no you can't, sorry, we haven't put that in there yet. So you can put in half baths but not half bedrooms. We did have one request for that, and I've seen a couple of listings here and there that show a half bedroom. Odd to me, I'm not sure how a half bedroom would work, besides maybe being like a nook or something like that. But we do have the ticket in our system, so we're going to give you the ability to do a half bedroom at some point here in the near future. Now the features that Marcelo was talking about, you want to hit more features right here. This is going to open up a box that allows you to select the different features. So run through it, compare it to the listing. You know, say we've got a single family home. It's got central air and heat, den and an office, laundry room. It's not an apartment, so I don't really care about pets, but it's got a fireplace, and let's say it's got a spa and a hot tub. Now you've also got 2 additional custom features that you can put in there. So in order to use those, make sure and check the box, and then you can type whatever you'd like. Say, for instance, Ocean View. You can even maybe put in what school district it's in, you know. And of course, you want to use your local one. This is Glendale Unified, where I was born and raised. And then once you hit the arrow here, it's part of your presentation. So if we're doing an open house on this same one, I've still got an image here, but if I want to use a different image for the open house, I can now put that over in the image 2 slot, and then when I get to my presentation area, I can select that image just for the open house. Now, since we're going to be doing an open house flyer, I'd want to show more than one option here. One option is it's just going to be one graph, and it's going to look kind of weird on your presentation. So you want to show at least 2 just to make it so it's a comparison of some kind. Especially when you're doing a conventional 5%, I would usually compare this to an FHA 3.5% because the MI over the life of the loan increases the APR pretty high on FHA loans. So the comparison here would be, yes, you can get a slightly lesser down payment if that's absolutely critical to you, but it's going to cost you more because you've got a little bit higher MI factor than you would on conventional in this one. You can't buy out of the MI on the FHA 3.5, but you might be able to on this conventional 5% down. So there's other options that come into play. So let me put in a second product here. And what I'll do is just hit add another product. And then I don't want to do all the legwork all over again, so I'm going to hit copy from. And then I'm going to copy from my conventional 5% down. And all I'm going to do is turn it into an FHA and change the down payment percentage and MI factors. So since I copied it, it brought everything over for me. I just need to rename this one. This one's going to be FHA, 3.5% down. I suppose I should use a period instead of a comma there. There we go. This is an FHA program, so I'm going to toggle FHA equals yes. That's going to give me the upfront MIP field in the next screen. And let's say for FHA, I can get them a slightly better rate. Because I use that copy function, all my fees came over automatically. I don't have to do anything with those. But if you had fees that were different on the FHA versus the conventional, you'd want to go into your closing cost detail and make modifications to those individual fees. Now once you're done editing your fees, just hit apply to loan. And then you got to make sure to put in your upfront MIP percentage. Now once you enter that percentage, you'll see a checkbox pop down below here that allows you to add this to the loan amount. So this is going to just put the upfront MIP on top of the amount financed. The last part is I need to change my MI factor, and I need to change some of my variables about the cutoffs. So I'm going to use 1.35. The LTV cutoff doesn't matter at all for the high LTV FHA loans. This is, actually goes back to Jim's question earlier. But we definitely want to calc this on the balance. And you'll notice that when we check this box, it changes the mortgage insurance amount. The reason is this is calculating on an average of 12 months balance. Now for the first MI payment, and gets to be a really hairy equation, that's why it took us a while to refine this for you. For the first MI payment, it's using the next 12 months, and then every time after that, it's using previous 12 months, which is kind of strange, but it does match your origination systems now. So if you use this, again, in order to get this box to show up, you have to use a factor here. You cannot use a dollar amount because it won't know how to recalculate it if you use a dollar amount. So for FHA loans, check this box, always, 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 always. And then for the high LTV ones that require it for the life of the loan, just make sure you enter the same amount as your term for the MI cutoff month. If you do want to show MI as being tax deductible, you can check that box. It still is for right now. They vote on it every year, so it may not be next year, but you never know. And then we're done with the MI, all the data entry on this. So all we're going to do now is I'm going to head to my analysis screen just because I want to see what the difference is. And if we were looking at this as a total cost, obviously the conventional wins out hand over fist in every situation because it's not only a cheaper price monthly, it saves a bunch of interest in MI over time. And then if we were to look at a long-term total interest in MI, we'd see that it would be a pretty big disparity. Now, because we're doing an open house, remember there's no real calculation going forward. All we're calculating is month one. What is it going to look like? And then we're calculating APR for you so they can use that for the future idea of what this loan is going to do. I don't have to change my partner information because I already had this loaded in here for the seller buy-down flyer. And now all I have to do is select open house instead of seller buy-down, and I can check the ones that I want to appear on this flyer. If you put in 4 products, for instance, and you sent this out and realtor says, you know what, I don't know if I really want to see that FHA loan on there. It just looks like, yeah, it's tantalizing for the low down payment, but look at that APR. That's ridiculous. I don't even want them to see that. All you'd have to do is come back to this screen, uncheck the box, and then hit the right arrow, and that'll trigger a save, and it'll remove that from the presentation. So when we check the seller buy down, we had some descriptions that we could fill in. We also have separate ones that we can fill for the open house flyer. So for instance, price to move. And actually, I might want to put that down here on the pricing label. So price to move at, and then it'll insert the price for me, so I don't have to put anything more than that. But presentation title, let's say, beautiful ocean view. And then notes, this is the area where you put additional property notes, payment notes, whatever you'd like. So let's see, property is not built on an Indian burial ground. Got to throw some humor into these. I've been talking to myself for almost an hour here. So then it's going to give you the option to select an image again. So if you had multiples, you could choose a different one for the open house flyer. And then make sure there's a quote date on it. So I've selected my quote date. I'm going to send an edge view alert to my partner as well, so that when my client views this presentation or a new borrower views this presentation, I'm going to get an alert and my partner's going to get an alert. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, so there's our title up at the top here, beautiful ocean view. You can see where my pricing label came into play. It's right there. And then I've got my 2 different products. Got my total payments next to them. There's my property notes. And then I've got my graphics showing what the monthly payments are, and then the branding for both my realtor partner and myself over here. Property features show up on the right. Now you'll notice that when you go to print, and I would always recommend before you send one of these open house flyers out, prepare the preview just like I've done here, and then hit the print button. This is going to give you a print preview so you can ensure that everything looks the way you expect it to look. The last thing you want is to send a link out to your partner and you've got ridiculously long product names that are pushing things out of view. When they go to print it, it's not showing right. Now the first thing I'm sure all of you notice right now is part of this is getting cut off up here. Now the reason is I've got a little too much space going on up here. So if I shorten up my pricing label to be like asking price or something like that, it's going to pull that 350 onto the same line as my pricing label, and I won't run into this problem. So this is a perfect example of why you want to preview the print. Now, if you know that this is not going to be printed out, you're just using this for social media, you're just posting it on your website, don't bother. This is okay. It's not going to cause a problem because the live version looks perfectly fine. And in fact, you can use even longer verbiage if you need to. But if you know it's going to be printed out, I would say do your print preview. Just make sure everything looks the way you want it to. Make any alterations that are necessary. I would probably go back in and change my pricing label on this one. So I'll do that. I would actually probably just change this priced at. But you could put asking price, sales price, listing price, whatever you'd like there. And then I'm going to jump back over to my preview. It's still open. It's automatically going to update for me in just a minute here. And you'll see that this pricing label at the top, this price to move, is just going to change to be priced at. And there we go. It just changed. So now it's priced at $350. And if I do my print preview now, we're going to see that we don't have that overlap in the print. So there we go. Now the top looks great. I don't have to worry about that. This one is ready to be sent out to my partner. Now again, make sure to record a video on it. If you're using this for prospecting purposes, your initial video when you're sending it out to your partner is going to be directed at the partner. So you want to introduce yourself and your potential relationship, what you can do to offer creative financing for them, what you're looking to gain out of this partnership. And you want to make sure and tell them in the video that at any time, you can change this video so it's geared towards a borrower. So once they're happy with it, once they like the financing options, once they're ready to put it out there, you can now record a video on that that's aimed at the borrower. And make sure to cross-sell your realtor partner when you do your borrower video. Oh, and you know what? It looks like Stephen just noticed my down payment is wrong for my FHA, and I think that's because I didn't change the down payment back in here. Well, I changed the name. I don't think I ever put the 3.5, so there we go. So good catch there, Stephen. It was still set at 5%, so it looked like it was exactly the same as the FHA, or as the conventional. So I needed to change that to be 3.5%. And then I'll hit the right arrow, and we will see that update on the live report in just a moment here. But good catch there, Stephen. Oliver's question, in the future, would it be possible to grab the property information from the MLS? Just a thought. And actually, it's a great idea, Oliver. We've looked at being able to do that. MLS kind of locks down a lot of their content. There are ways that we can do that, but I'll tell you honestly, we are looking into it. We'd love to be able to do it. Right now, there's no way to legally pull information directly from MLS. Without subscribing to a service that allows you to tie into their API. So we'd have to consider whether or not we're going to do that in the end. So the idea is up there, and we're certainly still hashing it out to see if there's a way we can do it for you. All right, so as you can see, my down payment automatically adjusted for me. It's now showing the correct amount for that FHA loan. And now you can see my monthly payment's got a little bit different, actually. So it's an even bigger disparity than it was before. All right, so it is now 10 o'clock. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the call off now. I think we've got all the questions answered. But if you guys have any more questions, just hit the help button up here. You can submit a ticket request directly to us. And in fact, the ticket system will even allow you to record a screencast recording of what's going on your machine. So you can record a video to tell us what the problem is. You don't necessarily have to type it all out. And let me show you that real quick before you guys leave here. So when you hit submit a request, at the very bottom there's a link that says record screencast. When you click on that, it's going to open up a video recorder, and then all you have to do is jump over to your Edge window and hit the record button. That's going to show up at the lower left corner of your screen. I'll show you what it looks like. See if it'll load it while I'm doing this. Oh, see, one thing, you do have to have Java installed here. I don't have Java installed in this particular browser. I have it in all my others, but I don't usually use IE for this. But as long as you've got Java, you will see the screen capture recorder will pop up. It'll count you down, and you'll have a record button down here at the lower left. Once you record, you can actually upload that recording to your ticket. And then once you hit submit, it'll submit it to us. We'll see the movie for you, and we can even respond with the video. And Dave's question real quick, I'm sorry, Dave, I did not see that earlier. He says, when I go to record message, the picture box is right in the middle. Even when I move it, it returns on the email. How can I reset the position of the box and have it stay there? Actually, Dave, we used to have it appear down in the lower right, but we got a lot of commentary from people saying that it was covering up too much valuable information. And when we polled our members, everybody said move it to the middle. That's the best place for it. So I will tell you that there's no way that you can change the position of the box when it shows up for your borrower. You can move it aside when you're recording, but when the borrower opens the report, it's always going to show up right in the middle of the screen. And Jack's question before we're going here, he says, not related, but at the end of the meeting, please address points entered on the product screen instead of in the closing cost template are included in the APR. So points are always an APR fee. If you were to go into the product section here and add a point right here, it is going to be an APR fee. If you were to do it in the closing cost detail, and you enter, let's say, and I know this wouldn't normally do it, but let's say you entered 1 point here, you have the option of whether or not to check the box here. Since points are always going to be APR fees, if it was a point, you definitely want to check the APR box. If this was just a percentage that you're using and it was a non-APR fee, you can leave that alone. So hopefully that answered your question there, Jack. Oh, and actually he says, points are not included. So same thing, if you were to enter points in this detail here, you have to check the box here for APR, otherwise it will not be included. But if you enter points on the outside, which you can do along with doing the closing cost detail, if you enter points right here, it's always going to be an APR fee and it will apply to the APR. All right, so I think that's a wrap, guys. You have a wonderful day. Thanks for the great questions. I did record this and we'll be posting it by the end of the day, and I hope to see you all again next week. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.